But I want to tell you a story about when I first worked at Moorhead. And it goes back to when I was a child. I always wanted to be an astronaut, go into outer space. But my eyes have always been too bad to ever realize that childhood dream, so I've had to find other ways of indulging a love of outer space. 25 years ago, I moved to Chapel Hill to attend graduate school, and I was delighted to discover that UNC had a world-class planetarium, Moorhead Planetarium, 6th planetarium in the US when it opened in 1949, first one in a small town, first anywhere on the planet that had been built on a university campus, and best of all, Moorhead Planetarium had trained astronauts. People like Neil Armstrong, who had been to the moon. So if I couldn't go to outer space myself, at least I could learn about it at the same place that had trained people who had. So I started attending shows at Moorhead Planetarium. So I have to ask now, I want to take a poll. Raise your hand. Have you ever been there, even if it was way back in 3rd grade? Oh, wow, it's a lot of people. Okay, those of you that did not raise your hands, put this on your to-do list because you have been missing out. So for those who do know this place, you know it's a large planetarium. It's big circular room, 68 feet across. It can seat more than 300 people when all the chairs are in. And it's topped with this stainless steel dome ceiling that rises 44 feet high at the center. And at that time, when I first started going to shows there in the 90s, they still had the Zeiss 6 optomechanical star projector. This massive, alien-looking piece of equipment that sat on a platform in the center of the room and projected the night sky onto that dome ceiling. Not the real night sky, but, you know, a realistic simulated version of it. And I noticed that there was somebody who seemed to be controlling everything, a planetarium staff member who sat at the side of the room behind this large console. This console was so large it wrapped all the way around them. It had hundreds of buttons and dials. And from there, this person controlled the star projector, 2 video projectors, about 100 slide projectors, and special effects like comets and supernova explosions. What power! I wanted that job. So I marched into the planetarium business office and shamelessly begged for it. In my zeal, I probably oversold myself a little bit. I bragged that I had gotten an A+ in my astronomy lecture course. I conveniently failed to mention that in the lab associated with that lecture, I proved to be so inept at dealing with equipment that I stood by helplessly every night while my 18-year-old undergraduate lab partners set up my telescope for me. So my training on that console was stressful. All those buttons and dials. This thing looked like the cockpit of the space shuttle, and you had to operate it in the dark. Remember the eyesight problem? Fortunately, I learned the shows are mostly controlled by computer. Thanks to the computer, this slide projector would send up an image on the dome there, another slide projector would put an image there, the stars would move across the dome in an orderly way. Really, all you had to do as the console operator was just make sure everything happened at the right time. Equipment failures, so rare, my training didn't really concentrate on how to fix them. Instead, I was warned, don't ever push the wrong button. Somebody had thoughtfully protected the buttons with the greatest potential for disaster with these plastic coverings. You had to lift the lid before you could get to the button. My first show was Planet Patrol. I was so excited. There were several elementary school groups that day, so there were 300 4th and 5th graders filling the room, and the place hummed with excitement. I grabbed my microphone from behind that large console. I strode out confidently in front of my audience, and I masterfully delivered the show introduction. I explained that we would be learning about the solar system, by visiting every planet in it with our Planet Patrol spacecraft. And for our grand finale, we would visit the sun itself. And that when the stars move across the dome, you might feel like you're moving, but don't worry, we're not. And then I went back behind the console, put the microphone away, brought the lights down, audio tape up, hit the go button, started the show. My work was done. Everything in the show went perfectly. At first. Until the end, when the Planet Patrol spacecraft was supposed to approach the sun. No sun picture on the dome. Uh-oh. Any moment, people would notice something was wrong. Which slide projector was it? Was it CC3A, CC4A, or maybe one of the other 100 slide projectors? I really wasn't sure. So I just hit a few buttons, looked back up at the dome. Well, all the projectors had gone rogue. They were now flinging slides up on the dome. Asteroids, comets, Saturn, Jupiter, overlaying on top of each other. The school children grew restless. They knew I had messed up. So I looked around again for something, just something to help, and then I saw it. A big red button. And I knew it was important because it had a protective plastic covering. It also had a label, but I couldn't really read the label because of the eyesight problem. So I just lifted up the lid and mashed down the button. Well, all those extra slides, they all faded away. But the stars zoomed across the sky, faster than I'd ever seen them go. And even though I knew better, I had the distinct sensation we were moving. I clutched onto the console. Meanwhile, the kids screamed in excitement. They thought it was part of the show. But I knew better, and I started getting so nervous, I began to sweat. And the sweat droplets dripped off my face and landed on the console, where they sizzled. In fact, some of the buttons appeared to be melting. Around me, the kids were shedding layers of clothing and fanning themselves. And I looked up at the dome, and oh, well, there was the sun picture, finally, but it didn't quite look right. Our sun picture, it was not really that impressive. It was very two-dimensional and kind of this dim, washed-out yellow. But the sun picture I was seeing now, it was three-dimensional. And it was bright yellow, super bright, like retina-burning bright. And it seemed to be getting bigger. And I was getting even hotter, so I reached away from the console to tug at my collar. And then I thought, well, I better hit that button again. So I reached out for the button, but it was 10 feet below me. I was floating. And around me, 300 4th and 5th graders were floating above their seats, too. Apparently, I had piloted the planetarium into outer space. Well, this was not good. The kids' parents weren't going to appreciate this. So I pushed off the dome, went back down to the console, hit that big red button. The stars zoomed across the sky in the opposite direction, and then boom, we were all pulled back into our seats by Earth's gravity. Room cooled down, lights came on. I grabbed the microphone, and as calmly as I could, I said, well, I hope you all enjoyed that show. Just another routine visit to your local planetarium. Please come see us again and watch your step on the way out. And afterwards, I thought, you know what? I think I'll send in that application to NASA's astronaut training program after all. My eyes are still bad, but now I've got experience. Okay, so it's fun to tell stories about the planetarium. And by the way, that story was mostly true. More of it was true than I'd like to admit to. But I especially love telling stories in the planetarium or under the real night sky. People all around the world have looked up at the sky and told stories about what they saw. So I want to share with you 3 short stories about one particular celestial object that you might have noticed today, the moon. Something really important is happening with the moon Sunday night. We'll get to that. Okay, first off, a story about how the moon came to be in the sky. This is an Anansi story, and it's called Anansi and the Flip-Flap Bird. And this is how it goes. Anansi, the spider, had 6 children, and their names were Sayle, road builder, river drinker, fish cutter, stone thrower, and cushion. And this story is going to tell you why. One day, Anansi set off to town to do some business, and he had been gone only a few minutes when Sayle gathered all the other children around and said, "Quick, I have seen. Father is in danger. He's fallen into the river, and he's been swallowed by a fish." So Road Builder made a road with her spider silk, and all the children went along it to get to the river. River Drinker slurped up all the water in the river, leaving just the fish that had swallowed Anansi. Fish Cutter cut it open, and there was their father, completely unharmed. But then the flip-flap bird swooped out of the sky, scooped him up in her beak, and carried him higher and higher and higher. Stone Thrower was ready, though, tossed a stone at the bird, hit it on the wing, squawk! The bird cried out in pain, and out of her open beak fell Anansi, falling, falling, falling. But Cushion was ready and softened his landing. Well, they all went back home, each child bragging about how they had been the most useful to their father. And when they got home, they went inside to make the dinner, and Anansi went for a stroll in the garden. He wanted to think of a gift to give his children. He knew they'd saved his life. He looked all around, and then he spotted it behind the avocado tree. It was a great glowing ball. "That's it," he said. "Pity, though, there's only one of it." So he went inside to ask his 6 children which one most deserved the prize. And Sayle said, "Well, me, of course. Without me, nobody would have known you were in danger." "Nonsense," said Road Builder. And it went on like this for the next few minutes. But in the meantime, the flip-flap bird had showed up in the family's garden. She could overhear that spider family arguing. She was feeling kind of sore from where Stone Thrower had hit her wing. She was feeling kind of hungry because she'd been counting on Anansi for lunch. And she decided to get her revenge. She went over to that great glowing ball behind the avocado tree, picked it up in her beak, and carried it high into the sky and hooked it on the tip of a star. So when Anansi came out to the garden with his 6 children, he looked all around and then realized the great glowing ball was way out of reach. So thinking quickly, he said, "Children, I have decided. I will give none of you the great glowing ball. Instead, I shall give it to everyone on earth. It will provide light for us, and I shall call it the moon." Well, Sayle knew what had really happened, of course, but she didn't say anything. And so it is to this day. Thanks to the flip-flap bird, we have the moon in the sky. I feel compelled as a science educator to add a quick scientific epilogue. That is not the scientific story of how the moon came to be in the sky. The leading idea among scientists, there's actually really good evidence for it, is something really big hit Earth a very long time ago and resulted in the formation of the moon. Okay. Next moon story, I learned from a teller named Lynn Maroney originally, and it comes from Lithuania. And it also has scientific issues. We'll get to that later. Here's how it goes. In the beginning, sun and moon were together in the sky. You'd see the sun, you'd see the moon. You'd see the moon, you'd see the sun. And as it sometimes happens, sun and moon spent so much time together, they really noticed each other. Sun noticed that moon was cold and dark and handsome. Moon noticed that sun was bright and shining with hair in every direction from her face. And as it sometimes happens, sun and moon spent so much time noticing each other, they fell in love, and they got married, and they lived together in a house at the top of the sky. Well, more time went by, about 9 months, and as it sometimes happens, a baby was born to them. This baby was round and blue and green with a little bit of white. What do you think they named the baby? Earth. And sun, moon, and earth lived together in a house at the top of the sky. Well, more time went by and more time, and as it sometimes unfortunately happens, Sun and Moon began to argue because Sun, she liked the things of day. She liked heat, and she liked light. But Moon, he liked the things of night. He liked cold, and he liked dark. And they would argue back and forth about the day and the night and the hot and the cold and the light and the dark until finally they decided to separate. But who would watch over Earth? Sun said to Moon, "You can't do it. Earth would be too cold. It'd be dark all the time." So they decided to seek wise counsel. They went to Thunder. Thunder listened to Sun, and then Thunder listened to Moon, and then she retired to her cloud chamber to think things over. And when she emerged, it was with a proclamation: joint custody. Sun would watch over Earth in the day, Moon would watch over Earth at night, just to make sure the stars would watch over everyone. Again, I am compelled to offer a brief scientific epilogue so you do not leave with the wrong idea. It depends on the moon phase, whether or not Moon is on the job of watching Earth at night. When the moon is new, it's up in the day, all day, only in the day. When the moon is full, yes, it is up at night, all night, only at night. Any other phase, like it is right now, it's up at least partly in the day, partly in the night. And in fact, the moon's waxing gibbous. You might have seen it rise this afternoon, and it will be off duty before the sun rises tomorrow. Okay. But the moon will be full in 4 days, and something really cool is going to happen that we have not been able to see here since 2015. You'll find out by the end. Okay, this is from Korea, and it's called the King's Fire Dogs. And this is how it goes. In the sky, there are as many countries as on Earth. One of these countries is called the Land of Darkness. The king of this land is always trying to think of ways to bring light to his people, and he keeps huge, mean, ferocious fire dogs. One day, he summoned his biggest, meanest, most ferocious fire dog, and he said to it, "Go steal me the sun." And that fire dog ran into the sky, and it tried to seize the sun in its jaws. But the sun was hot, and it couldn't hold on to it, and it snapped, and it snapped, and it snapped, and it had to spit out the sun again. And that dog went back to the king with its tail between its legs. So the king just summoned his second, biggest, meanest, most ferocious fire dog, and he said to it, "Go steal me the moon." The moon, he thought, maybe wouldn't be as hot as the sun. And so that dog ran into the sky, and it tried to seize the moon in its jaws. But the moon was cold. It made its teeth sing with pain. It froze its tongue to the roof of its mouth, and it snapped, but it had to slowly let go of the moon again. And that dog ran back to the king with its tail between its legs. But the king has not given up. From time to time, he'll send a fire dog into the sky to try to steal the sun or the moon, and you'll see the bite marks whenever there's an eclipse. Okay, so epilogue. Did any of you all see the August 21st, 2017 eclipse? You saw a fire dog take a bite out of the sun. Maybe you saw it swallow the whole thing if you were in the right path. Well, this Sunday, the full moon is going to pass into Earth's shadow. And at 10:33 p.m., soon after that, you'll see it's got a little dent in it. The dog's just bumping its nose against it. But soon after that, you'll see that bite. You'll see what looks like bite marks. The bite will get bigger and bigger. 11:41 p.m., that fire dog's going to swallow the whole moon. And it's going to hold on to it for 62 minutes. That's really good, by the way, for a lunar eclipse. 62 minutes of totality. And then it's going to take another hour to slowly spit it out again. And the moon will turn a funky shade of red, orange, brown, gray. It's actually really hard to predict. And you should see it. It's going to be freezing cold, so wear like 4 coats. 10:33 p.m. to 1:50 in the morning, Sunday into Monday. Monday's probably a holiday for you. Thank you.